It's been 30 years since one of the craziest cases in hip-hop history, the murder of Tupac Shakur. Well, finally, over the past couple of days, it is official. The only man ever to be held to account for this crime that's still alive, at least at this day and age, in 2020, big 2026, 30 years later, Keefe D, okay, his murder trial has officially begun, okay? A few days ago, while all eyes were on Lil Durk, the man who allegedly killed Tupac is facing trial. I've said before that Lil Durk versus NBA Youngboy, Quando Rondo, King Von, that's like the Tupac versus Biggie of this generation of music. And it's so interesting that it just so happens that the modern day Tupac and Biggie case, as Lil Durk is facing federal murder for hire charges, and the original alleged killer of Tupac, Keefe D, or at least the last remaining living gunman in that case, is now facing these charges, okay? So I'm going to break down the last few days of updates in this video and let you know what's going on with Keefe D in this video, because we on top of everything over here, okay? We are not letting any of these stories pass us by, even though I'm locked in at the courthouse for the Lil Durk case. Look at this. There he is. So they're televising this one, which I think is really interesting. Obviously, there's no cameras allowed in the Durk courtroom, federal courthouse. Obviously, while I was covering the David trial, that's not being permitted to have cameras either. I guess they get a little bit more flamboyant with it in Las Vegas, where this is going down, and the cameras are allowed in the courtroom. We've got Law and Crime. I believe Vlad had a feed as well. Shout out to him. So during opening statements, prosecutors basically claimed that Keefe D had become a major drug trafficker and had befriended a New York dope dealer called Eric Von Zip Martin, who actually connected him to P. Diddy and Bad Boy Records. That's how it went down.
What you need to know is that Tupac Shakur was not a gangster. He was a hip-hop artist associated with the Mafia Group. Now, the other gang that's important to know here is the Southside Compton Crips. And when it comes to Southside, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was the leader of the Burris Street faction of the Southside Compton Crips. And while Suge Knight rose to prominence in his neighborhood due to the money that he was bringing in through the music industry, Dwayne Davis rose to prominence in his neighborhood because he was a very successful, large-scale drug trafficker. And you will learn that that is how one moves up in the world of gangs, by bringing in money to the neighborhood. The other thing you'll learn is that Orlando Baby Wayne Anderson was his nephew, and also a highly respected member of the Southside Compton Crips. Now, as part of this case, you're going to hear another name. Eric Zip Martin. Now, Eric Zip Martin is not a member of the Southside Compton Crips. In fact, he's based out of New York. He's involved in the drug trade and knows Dwayne Davis as a result of both their involvements in the drug trade. Dwayne Davis from the West Coast, Eric Zip Martin from the East Coast.
It's interesting, okay? So apparently in a separate interview, a former NYPD detective, Bill Courtney, actually claimed that Zip was known as the king of PCP. That's not something I want to be king of.
So Eric Von Zip was known to me as somebody who was at one time worked with Melvin Combs, who was Puffy's father. He was a drug dealer in Harlem. He was known as being the king of PCP in New York. And if you wanted
Zip or Melvin, I'm sorry?
Zip.
Okay.
So Eric Von Zip was known as the PCP king. If you wanted liquid PCP, he had it, and he'd sell you it in like huge, allotments. Back then, guys were dipping, weed, a joint into PCP, smoking it, and doing really crazy stuff. I guess it's like kind of like a meth speed kind of thing, but it also has, the ability to make people violent.
So people be wilding out off the PCP. I'm not going to lie. That is not something I would ever touch, or it's not something I would ever condone. I condemn PCP usage. I want to make that clear. But anyway, DJ Vlad would do an interview that was interesting where he brought up earlier claims that Zip had once dated Diddy's mother. Obviously, they're saying that he was connected to Diddy's father. But apparently, according to Zip's close friend TK Kirkland, Zip was getting busy with Diddy's mom.
Zip is one of the... Listen, when we would go shopping,
Zip would get in 20 cars before we got into the main car, before we got to the
you
station.
just jump from car to car?
We would go from car 10 blocks. I thought that was just in the movies when I saw it.
So he had cars he owned parked in different
Zip
locations?
had cars, my man.
Wow.
We would get in one car, do that.
Someone told me, I forgot who this was, said that before he passed, he was dating Puffy's mom.
Yeah.
That's
I
true.
thought that was a money grab. That's what I said. Motherfucker. That's exactly what I said. That motherfucker
you talked to him
Zip.
about it?
Yeah, I said that motherfucker Zip. Because me and his sister's tight too to this
Okay.
day, right? I said that motherfucker Zip. He's something else, but
Yeah.
Zip something. Zip a player, man.
Yeah, no, I
Zip a
remember
player.
when I interviewed Mike Tyson. He said, how basically Zip basically stole like a few $100,000 from
Yes.
Don King.
Yes.
He just finessed him out the money.
At all my shows, I give flowers at the end of my shows. I have champagne. And that's because of Zip.
Huh.
So Zip was a real deal street legend, apparently. So another interesting DJ Vlad clip would kind of touch on some more interesting details. So apparently, both Keefe D and Diddy's former bodyguard Gene Deal would confirm that Keefe D and the Southside Crips had regularly spent time around Diddy's Bad Boy Records. And if I was Diddy, I'd be shaking in my boots.
Before
These
hit him up.
revelations.
Was Puffy approaching y'all for security and protection?
No, he had a West Coast. He had a West Coast tour coming up.
Okay.
San Diego, San Jose, little areas, Anaheim, LA, stuff like that, Vegas. So he called when I'm in Zip. I don't know whether they had set this up or not, but Zipper came pick me up. We rolling up Greenleaf in our neighborhood, and his phone ring, boom, and it was Puff. And he like, you think it's cool to come out here and do concerts? I'm like, why it wouldn't be cool? So he like, the big CEO dude. So,
Sugar.
yeah, I like, damn, what's going on with y'all? He like, man, shit, you think it's just cool? I like, shit, just let me know the dates and give me some tickets. We had the Crips there, but I see he was trying to play us against each other. Crips, Bloods, you know what I'm saying? Sugar, Blood, we the Crips. So I guess that was his protection thing going.
Okay, so he just gave you guys some tickets to a show.
Yeah.
Now, how did you see, Keefe and the Southside guys, from your point of view?
Well, I would only see the head knockers, Keefe D and whoever he brought with him, and they usually meet up in the hotel and come. He didn't bring the whole Southside Crips and everything. It'd be like one or two of them, and they'll come upstairs and they love to gamble. So it'd be Zip, D-Mac, Puff, a couple of Crips, and they be in there. They be gambling. That's it. Shooting dice. And one day it was the first time I met Keefe. It was Tretch, Arnell Simpson.
So you get the gist, all right? They kind of all was around, all right? There was overlap with Bad Boy Records, overlap with Diddy. It's very suspect. So I'm surprised Diddy's not somehow been wrapped up in this in no official capacity, but that's not the case yet. But prosecutors would apparently explain how death row associate Trayvon Trey Lane had his chain snatched months before 2Pac's murder during a confrontation which involved, who would you guess it? The Southside Crips.
And one of the connections that Dwayne Davis gets through his association with Zip Martin is with Sean Puffy Combs, who was then the CEO of Bad Boy Entertainment. Sean Combs wanted some security when he came out to the West Coast. He was worried about Mob Piru. He was worried about the members of Death Row Records. And so Dwayne E.P.D. Davis agreed to be around to act as unofficial security for Sean Combs and his artists when they came out west, in order specifically to ensure there are no problems with Mob Pyro and Death Row Records. And this took a rivalry between Mob Pyro and Southside Compton Crips and escalated it. And those tensions boiled over in the Lakewood Mall in the summer of 1996.
I'm not going to lie to you. This is a beautiful graphic. This is like something I'd put in one of my videos. The split screen, the colors. Hey, this is the exact type of thing I put in one of my videos.
There, you'll hear that Trayvon Lane,
They even got the reaction. They got a reaction in the corner.
a member of the Mob Piru, associated with Death Row Records, was there with other members of Mob Piru in order to do some shopping. Lakewood Mall was a mall nearby Compton. You'll also hear that baby Lane Anderson, Orlando Anderson, the defendant's nephew, was there. Now, Trayvon Lane that day was wearing a chain with a Death Row medallion. And there was a fight that occurs between the Mob Piru group and the Southside Compton Crips. And at one point, that chain is pulled off Trayvon Lane's neck. Now, what happened to that chain is an issue of much dispute. Not everybody agrees with it. But the act of disrespect of pulling the death row chain and the brawl that occurs further escalates this heated rivalry. And what you'll learn is that these two men, Trayvon Lane and Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, they encounter each other again, this time in Las Vegas. So that brings us back up to September 7th, 1996, here in Las Vegas. Again, Mike Tyson is fighting Bruce Sullivan. He disposes of him in less than a round.
So it was at that Mike Tyson fight that we just saw depicted there, okay? It was obviously at the Mike Tyson fight when all this went down. There was a big confrontation, September the 7th, 1996. And it was after that fight that Trey spotted Orlando Anderson inside the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino and pointed him out to Tupac when Tupac and Death Row took it upon themselves to attack Orlando in retaliation for the chain snatching.
In a round. Doesn't take a full round. And then after the fight, Tupac Shakur, Suge Knight, and the people that are here with, they leave. And among his group is Trayvon Lane. And that is why this fight occurs. Trayvon Lane and the Death Row group sees Orlando Anderson standing by himself, and they decide to attack him in retribution for what happened at the Lakewood Mall. You'll see Orlando Anderson's on the bottom of that group. You see security coming, trying to break this up. And then you'll see Tupac Shakur, Suge Knight, Trayvon Lane, and that group exit the MGM Grand. Now, Orlando Anderson was by himself because when Dwayne Davis purchased the tickets for the Bruce Sullivan fight, he got them through a scalper. So everybody that came with Dwayne Davis were seated separately throughout the fight. And so Orlando Anderson was, at that time, by himself. You'll see that Mr. Shakur, Mr. Knight, and his group leave the MGM Grand.
This is iconic footage, man. You've probably seen this a bunch of times. I'm probably going to have to blur out the actual fight, but like that footage of Tupac in a silk shirt storming back through the casino, they victorious, they just put a beat down on somebody. Hey, this is legendary, historic footage that's finally seeing its day in court.
And you'll see that Orlando Anderson, after being held by security, is questioned for a bit, asked if he wants to press charges. He decides he doesn't want to participate in any type of prosecution and that he doesn't need medical attention. Dwayne Davis hears about this beating. And what you will hear is that in his world, there is no question that a response is required. And you will hear from Dwayne Davis what happens next.
So this was a pretty savage beatdown, all right? And as they say, there was no way that this was going to be allowed to go unretaliated for, okay? So after that, what we would end up hearing is, according to prosecutors, Keefe D was apparently furious that his nephew had been attacked. And he would basically meet back up with Eric Von Zip, who allegedly provided them with a gun that then Keefe D and the Southside Crips took to then go looking for Tupac and Suge, including attending Club 662, where they were basically running around looking for the guy.
So what we learn is that Dwayne Davis is upset about the beating of his nephew. And frankly, that's not an unusual response. What's unusual is the next steps Dwayne Davis takes. Unusual for the normal person, maybe not unusual for in-gang culture. Dwayne Davis decides he is going to organize a retaliation, that this beating cannot go unanswered. Then he runs into a person named Zip Martin. Remember the Zip Martin that was a connection with Bad Boy Entertainment from New York? And Zip Martin tells him that he has a gun and that he can come help him out.
Hey, where do you go to? What do you tell Zip right then? You tell Zip, hey, we're going to go handle this shit or whatever?
Yeah, like, y'all want us to come? I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? They was telling they going to get 662 club.
Who's saying that?
Everybody. Yeah, everybody. You know,
well, how do you know that Zip's got a gun? Does he tell you?
It was in the lobby. I in the lobby. I got one.
Did you ask him? Do you have one, or just tells you, yeah, I got one?
Yeah, that's when they asked me, do we need help? I said, Jimmy, like, yeah, okay, cool.
I don't know what he gave you.
Yeah.
So later, Dwayne Davis organizes 2 vehicles to go over to the 662 club. Before that, he gets the gun from Zip Martin. He goes out to his Mercedes-Benz, gets the gun from Zip Martin, and then after some time, he assembles 2 cars to go to 662 to violently confront Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight for the beating of his nephew. And you'll hear that Dwayne Davis wasn't initially in the white Cadillac. He goes into a van, and Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, they go in a white Cadillac, and they go to Club 662.
I'm not going to lie, Keefy D looks like he knows he's cooked. He looks low-key defeated. I don't know if that's his disposition, but he don't look confident like he looked in them Vlad interviews. He looked like he know he in some bad work.
Waiting for Tupac Shakur, waiting for Suge Knight, waiting for this violent confrontation. And what you'll learn is that Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight don't show up while they're there.
We went out to 626, they didn't show up. We waited about 15, 20 minutes, they didn't show up. So, they're like, let's go get some liquor. We stopped at the liquor store. I got out the van there and jumped in the Cadillac.
So what you hear Dwayne Davis say is he got out of the van and goes into the Cadillac. And the plan at that point is to go to a liquor store, get some booze, and then go back to the Las Vegas Strip and party. What the original intention was before Orlando Anderson was beaten at the MGM Grand.
It's pretty bad. Okay, the situation is extremely bad for this man. So apparently when they found Tupac and Suge on the Strip, according to prosecutors, Keefy D basically provided the gun that was used in the shooting. And look, he's the only person that's still alive from this. I don't think they're claiming that he was the one that bust off the shots, but basically he involved in a murder, he instigated the murder, and he's the only one who alive to answer for this murder.
And in that white Cadillac, before the shooting occurs, Dwayne Davis explains that the driver is Terrence T. Brown. In the rear driver's side is DeAndre Dre, or Big Dre Smith. In the rear passenger side is Orlando Baby Lane Anderson. And Dwayne Davis himself, KBD, is in the front passenger side. And this is how Dwayne Davis explains the murder of Tupac Shakur.
Yeah. He blew a bunch of stores right there. Then we came up Harlem at the Long Bay Boulevard. And shit. Here they come that BMW like Jay Carter. I'm brawling. Tupac. I was like, there you go. Made a U-turn. What supposed to make it? Just one U-turn. They was in the middle lane. We just pulled up on the side, checked every car to see where they was.
So what directed your attention to was some girls shouting at Tupac?
Tupac! He gave his son away. Otherwise, they would have gone away. He all had nothing. What you want to do? They was
You did a U-turn, so then you pull alongside of it. You got to turn the car. Have you already handed the gun at this point, or at what point have you handed him the gun?
I thought he was going to go on my side. You know, that's one of them there, you want to look out for him, you know. He pulled on his side.
So
So you were fitting the glass if you had to, or you were just...
We would have been on our side, I would have.
Okay. So you hand the gun into the back seat.
Yeah.
You can hear bang.
I gave it to Dre. Dre was like, no. And Lane's like, dude, fuck, dude.
So what you hear Dwayne Davis admit that as they see Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight driving to Club 662, Dwayne Davis, along with Terrence Brown, DeAndre Smith, and Orlando Anderson, decide to make a U-turn, confront Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight. Dwayne Davis had the firearm. It's the firearm he got from Eric Von Zit Martin, and then he passes it to the back. Dwayne Davis says that if they were on his side, if Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight were on his side of the vehicle, he would have shot them himself. But because they were on the other side, he handed it to DeAndre Smith. DeAndre Smith, according to Dwayne Davis, did not want to shoot at that time, so Orlando Anderson shot into that car. Dwayne Davis explains this over and over again.
Literally, on the street.
Okay, Lane starts blasting. You say Suge looks over, he sees you. He looks right at you. Are you nervous?
It's only just understand you look.
He looks over at you, and then Tupac's dizzy getting shot. Evidently, the story is Tupac's trying to either get out
In the back seat or something.
Yeah, what do you see happening inside of that
Jump
car?
in. I see the bullet going through. Yeah, I thought he was dead. He was straight or something in the head or something.
A piece of glass went into his neck right here.
Yeah, the thing in the head.
A little gray.
I thought he was dead.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, did you guys stop the two girls? Did both stop the car and let them get off?
Yeah. And we made the right.
Okay, but he stopped what you said. Why you cool? Let off.
Yeah. We made the right and some brawl to Seagrave and phones. Stupid bitches. And we stopped, they went around and they stopped.
So Tupac's trying to jump in the back seat. And what's your doing? He's tucking?
He couldn't really duck because he was too big, you know. Yeah.
That's crazy. So he's saying he thought Tupac was dead. Suge couldn't really do anything. It was just a horrible situation. Now, prosecutors basically would claim that they would be hearing from a woman in the car that was near the shooting in a different vehicle, and basically about retaliation shootings that also followed Tupac's murder.
One of the things Dwayne Davis talks about during the murder of Tupac Shakur is that there's a car full of women. I think he calls them broads at one point. A car full of women who are there as well. And you're going to hear from one of those women. And what she's going to tell you is that she disagrees slightly with Mr. Davis's rendition of facts. They were, in fact, communicating with Suge at Tupac's car, but they weren't talking to Tupac, they were talking to Suge. And what she says is she hears gunshots, she sees the white Cadillac flee, and then what Dwayne Davis interprets as them chasing her, she'll tell you is them just panicking and trying to get away. But she will say they inadvertently follow Dwayne Davis and the other people in the white car as they are fleeing. After Suge Knight and Tupac Shakur's vehicle is shot, Suge Knight makes a U-turn and heads back to the Las Vegas Strip. The car ultimately can go no further and stops. Police arrive, medical arrives, and you will hear that Suge Knight was grazed in the head and had some glass going in his neck. He ultimately survives those injuries and is released fairly quickly. You'll also hear that Tupac Shakur was shot multiple times, that he was brought to UMC, and that 6 days later, he succumbed to those injuries. And within 24 hours, the Cadillac and the assailants are back in Compton. They stay the night, and they drive right home as though nothing happened. But a war followed them back to Compton. Because while people were afraid to come forward to police The police knew, and the streets knew that Southside Compton Crips were responsible for this murder. And the war that follows at Compton is a bloody one. You'll hear that Mob Piru and Southside Crip members start shooting at each other. Within 10 days, 3 people are killed. A number of people are shot, including an 11-year-old girl. And what you'll also learn is that none of those cases were prosecuted. Why? Because in this context, in the gang context of this, the combination of gangs and guns is scary. And in this world, silence means survival.
So clearly there was a big cover up, okay? And even though, you know, people, it sound like they kind of tailed Keefe D and them after the alleged murder of Tupac, there's just so much evidence. And the more I see him, the more I think he just looks completely cooked, to be honest with you. He looks to me like he's, I don't want to say given up, but he looking like he realizing he in deep doo-doo at this point. So what's interesting is after this, prosecutors would then go through various statements that Keefe D made between the late 90s and 2023, including apparently during the investigation into the death of Biggie Smalls too. So his name popped up a whole bunch.
You're going to hear from 1998 to 2023, Dwayne Davis has given a number of statements regarding this case. So, as early as 1998, Davis spoke to the FBI. He admitted he was in Las Vegas during Tupac's murder, but he denies being responsible. Then in 1999, Davis speaks to the FBI again. And these aren't interviews that are focused on the Tupac Shakur murder. These are interviews regarding drug transactions and drug trafficking. But he does say that Tupac does come up, and Dwayne Davis admits to being in Las Vegas for Tupac Shakur's murder. Says he wasn't involved, but he was mad about the fact that Orlando Anderson was beaten, and that his plan was to handle it in Compton had Tupac survived. Then in 2008, the interview of clips we've heard today, in a secret interview with the federal task force, Davis admits to his role in the murder of Tupac Shakur. And we do need to talk a little bit about this 2008 federal task force. Because what this task force is investigating is not the murder of Tupac Shakur. What this task force is investigating is another rapper's murder. A rapper by the name of Christopher Wallace. Somebody who is known as Biggie Smalls, so the notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace got murdered 6 months after Tupac Shakur was killed. And there was some allegation that the LAPD might have been involved. So a federal task force was formed to determine what happened to Christopher Wallace. And the interesting thing about the murder of Christopher Wallace is that Christopher Wallace is killed leaving a party in LA. Also at that party, Dwayne Davis. Christopher Wallace there was a suspect vehicle that involved a Chevy SS Impala, and Dwayne Davis happened to own a Chevy SS Impala. Now, as a result of that, the task force decides, well, let's look at Dwayne Davis. And the thing we know about Dwayne Davis is that he trafficked narcotics. And so they were able, through a CI and an undercover, to have a drug transaction with Dwayne Davis. And as a result, Dwayne Davis now has a case, a big trafficking case. And so the federal task force approaches Dwayne Davis and his attorney, and they say, hey, look, we want information regarding the murder of Christopher Wallace. That is what we are trying to investigate. And what Dwayne Davis says is, I don't have any information about that thing, but I can tell you about what we did. I can tell you about Tupac.
So, yeah, he did a little bit too much talking. Again, I just feel like you see in his face, like, he knows he did too much talking. It's really no good. So the next part that was interesting, okay, is where they basically explained how Keefe D pretty much tried and failed to get Zip on a wiretap before Detective Greg Kading later published details of Keefe D's account of the incident through a book. So this was all just a mess, and he was way in over his head at a certain point.
In 2009, Davis is being so helpful to federal authorities that he actually flies out to New York to try and get Zip Martin to implicate himself in the Tupac Shakur murder. Zip Martin at that time was dying of cancer, was out of the game, and really did not engage with Dwayne Davis. In 2009, though, Dwayne Davis gives an interview to Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Detective Dan Long. Now, Dwayne Davis is more guarded in that interview. It is a different setting than the interview of 2008. It's not a secret proffer agreement. But Dwayne Davis does admit a number of things. That he was in Las Vegas, that he was mad about Orlando Anderson getting beat, that he was the boss, that he was in the white Cadillac, and that he procured the firearm that ultimately killed Tupac Shakur. Then, in 2011, the landscape changes. Because in 2011, Greg Kading, the guy who was leading the task force in 2008, the guy who organized the secret proffer between Dwayne Davis and the federal task force, he leaves law enforcement and decides he's going to publish a book about his investigation into Biggie Smalls, the guy who was killed 6 months after Tupac, and Tupac Shakur. And what he puts in the book is that Dwayne Davis confessed to the murder of Tupac Shakur. The book tells the story about Davis' admission, about himself, but it also tells the story of Dwayne Davis telling about his nephew's involvement in the murder, about Big Dre's involvement in the murder, about Terrence Brown's involvement in the murder. And this is a problem for Dwayne Davis. Because that meeting was supposed to be secret. And now his cooperation with federal authorities is open to the world. Not only that, Greg Kading is now profiting off Dwayne Davis's life story.
Yeah, that book was basically just a huge mistake. And so really, that's where we get to 2017. That's the last thing that I'll leave you with that really was just disastrous, okay? Just look, he's just so cooked. Is when Keefe D started going through public interviews, later through the book. And basically this helped get him into this predicament because it's like, it's one thing having a proffer agreement where you told the cops stuff that can't be used against you, but it's another taking that same information and taking it on a goddamn roadshow out here in public interviews and books to make money.
So, in 2017, Dwayne Davis decides to go public. He's approached by the producers of a show called Death Row Chronicles that appears on BET. And this is just a small portion of what he says is his motivation for appearing.
When it went in DVD days, I was Compton, kingpin, drug dealer. I'm the only one alive that really continued the story about the Tupac Shakur. People have been pursuing me for 20 years. Newspapers, magazines. I'm coming out now to tell the story because I got cancer. I got nothing else to lose. All I care about now is the truth.
He said I got nothing else to lose. But now look at him.
Dwayne Davis says, all I want to do now is tell the truth. And in the 2017 public...
He's overcooked. Look at it. He's just thinking, bruh, maybe I did have other stuff to lose.
interview, he's a little evasive, but he admits to being the boss. He admits to being in the white Cadillac. And he admits to be part of the murder of Tupac Shakur. And when he says he's the only person that can tell what happened, he's right. Because by 2017, Terrence Brown is deceased. DeAndre Smith is deceased. Orlando Baby Lane Anderson is deceased. Terrence Brown was murdered in an unrelated incident. Orlando Anderson was murdered in an unrelated incident. And DeAndre Smith died from health issues. Remarkably, in 2019, Dwayne Davis then decides he's going to publish his own book. And with regards to the book, it is certainly a lot of self-aggrandizement. But again, the core remains. He was mad about Orlando Anderson about the beating of Orlando Anderson, his nephew. He was in Las Vegas. He got the gun. He was in the white Cadillac, and he handed the gun to the shooters. And what you'll notice is a constant thing that always goes through these statements is Dwayne Davis's visceral anger at Tupac Shakur for putting hands on his nephew. In the book, he says, them jumping on my nephew gave us the ultimate green light to do something to their ass. Then, Dwayne Davis decides that he's going to do public interviews regarding his role in the murder of Tupac Shakur.
So you ended up getting in the car with Baby Lane and them? Yeah, the car was on, yeah. We went in the gym, went to the light on Sunset and Amigo, and dude, we acted like he was in a parade or something. That niggas in that BMW hanging out the window, hey, it's Tupac, it's Tupac. And them bitches, shit, they was hollering for him. Oh yeah, they were that motherfucker. They came up on the side of him. And shit.
It's just devastating, really. I mean, it's devastating. So look, this is kind of I'm a little bit behind the news on this one, okay? But I'm gonna try and keep you guys updated, like in my spare time when I get home from the Dirk trial. Keep you guys updated on the 2Pac case. But yeah, this is bad, and I think Keefy D just looking deep fried. To be honest with you, he looking depressed on that defendant table. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty bad. So if I hear anything else about this situation, I'll be sure to let you guys know. It's definitely a hot one. Yeah, I'm locked in with a Dirk situation. Keefy D getting it. Everybody, all the famous hip hop cases are getting solved. All right, ain't really too. Crime ain't looking like the one right now. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching this video. I'll be back with some more updates very soon. I'll see you there. Peace.